3 Creepy True Voices in the Night Horror Stories. Introduction. Welcome back to Dark Whispers, where the shadows speak and the night reveals its darkest secrets. I'm your host, and tonight, we're diving into something that will make you question every sound you hear after sunset. What happens when the familiar voice of someone you love calls out to you in the darkness, but they're not really there? When whispers echo through empty rooms, speaking words that shouldn't be spoken. When the night itself seems to have found its voice. Tonight, I'm bringing you 3 disturbing true stories about voices in the night, voices that shouldn't exist, voices that defy explanation, and voices that left their witnesses forever changed. These aren't campfire tales or urban legends. These are real experiences from real people who encountered something inexplicable when darkness fell. Before we begin, if you're a fan of true horror stories and unexplained mysteries, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We post new terrifying content every week, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, turn down your lights, put in your headphones, and whatever you do, if you hear a voice calling your name tonight, make absolutely sure you know who or what it really is before you answer. Let's begin. Story 1: The Mother's Call. Sarah Mitchell was 23 years old when she moved into her first apartment in Portland, Oregon. It was a small 1-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor of an old converted Victorian house, the kind with creaking hardwood floors and tall windows that rattled when the wind blew hard. She loved it immediately: the exposed brick walls, the vintage fixtures, the sense of history that seemed to breathe through every room. Her mother, Janet, lived just 20 minutes away, and they spoke on the phone almost every evening. It was their ritual, their way of staying connected even though Sarah had finally flown the nest. Janet would call around 8 o'clock and they'd talk about their days, share stories, laugh about nothing in particular. It was comfortable. It was normal. The first time Sarah heard the voice, she'd been living in the apartment for about 3 weeks. It was a Tuesday night, sometime around 2 in the morning. Sarah woke suddenly, pulled from sleep by something she couldn't quite identify. The apartment was dark except for the faint orange glow of streetlights filtering through her bedroom curtains. She lay there for a moment, disoriented, wondering what had disturbed her. Then she heard it. "Sarah. Sarah, honey." It was her mother's voice, soft and distant, coming from somewhere in the apartment. Sarah's heart jumped. Her first thought was confusion. Why would her mom be here at 2 in the morning? Had something happened? Was there an emergency? "Mom?" Sarah called out, sitting up in bed. "Mom, is that you?" No response. Just silence, heavy and waiting. Sarah threw off her covers and walked to her bedroom door, flipping on the light as she went. The living room was empty. The kitchen was dark. She checked the front door, still locked, chain still fastened. She was alone. A chill ran down her spine. She must have been dreaming, she told herself. Just a vivid dream bleeding into wakefulness. It had sounded so real, so perfectly like her mother's voice, but it couldn't have been. There was no one here. Sarah went back to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. She lay in the darkness, listening to every creak and groan of the old building, her nerves jangling with unease. The next morning, she called her mother. "Hey Mom, weird question," Sarah said, trying to keep her tone light. "You weren't at my apartment last night, were you?" Janet laughed. "At 2 in the morning? Honey, I was sound asleep." "What? Did you dream I visited you?" "Something like that," Sarah said, not wanting to worry her mother. "Just a weird dream, I guess." "Well, I'm sorry I invaded your dreams," Janet said with a chuckle. "Maybe you're missing me." Sarah laughed along, but something about the experience stuck with her, like a splinter she couldn't quite remove. A week passed. Sarah almost forgot about the incident, dismissing it as a sleep-induced hallucination. Then it happened again. This time, Sarah woke to the sound of her mother's voice calling her name from the living room. It was 3:15 in the morning. She checked her phone to be sure. The voice was clearer this time, more insistent. "Sarah. Sarah, come here, honey. I need to show you something." Every instinct in Sarah's body screamed that something was wrong. That wasn't how her mother talked. The cadence was right, the tone was right, but the words felt off somehow, like someone reading from a script they didn't quite understand. "Mom?" Sarah called out, her voice shaking. "Is that you?" Come here, Sarah. Come see. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She pulled up her mother's contact and pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. In the living room, the voice continued. Sarah, come here now. Then her mother answered, voice thick with sleep. Sarah? Honey, what's wrong? It's 3 a.m. The voice in the living room stopped immediately, cut off mid-word like someone had flipped a switch. Sarah's blood ran cold. Mom, where are you right now? I'm in bed, sweetheart. Where else would I be? Are you okay? Sarah couldn't speak for a moment. Her mother was at home in bed 20 minutes away. So who, or what, had been calling her name from her living room? I'm fine, Mom. Sorry, I just had a nightmare. Go back to sleep. After she hung up, Sarah sat in her bed with all the lights on until dawn broke. She didn't sleep. She didn't dare leave her bedroom. She just sat there, listening to the silence, wondering what was sharing her apartment. The incidents continued, growing more frequent and more disturbing. Sometimes Sarah would hear her mother's voice whispering her name from the bathroom while she was in the kitchen. Other times, she'd hear it coming from the closet, soft and coaxing, always trying to get her to come closer, to investigate, to respond. Sarah, I have something to tell you. Sarah, I need your help. Sarah, why won't you answer me? It only happened at night, always between 2 and 4 in the morning. Sarah started sleeping with headphones in, playing white noise to drown out any sounds. But sometimes, even through the static, she'd hear it, that familiar voice that wasn't her mother at all, calling to her from the darkness. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was the neighbors, sound traveling strangely through the old building's walls and floors. Maybe she was stressed, experiencing auditory hallucinations brought on by the anxiety of living alone for the first time. Maybe she was losing her mind. But deep down, Sarah knew none of those explanations felt right. This was something else, something that knew her mother's voice perfectly, something that wanted her to respond, to engage, to come closer. One night, Sarah made the mistake of answering. It was a particularly bad evening. She'd been homesick from work, running a fever, her thoughts fuzzy and disconnected. She'd fallen asleep on the couch around 9 o'clock, still dressed, a half-empty glass of water on the coffee table beside her. The voice woke her sometime after midnight. Sarah, honey, wake up. I need to talk to you. It sounded so concerned, so perfectly like her mother checking in on her when she was sick, that Sarah responded before she could think better of it. I'm here, Mom, she mumbled, eyes still closed. I'm awake. Good girl. Now come here. Come to the bedroom. Something about that request cut through Sarah's fever fog. Her mother wouldn't ask her to go to the bedroom. Her mother wasn't here. Sarah's eyes snapped open. The apartment was dark except for the light from the muted television casting flickering shadows across the walls. And there, in the doorway to her bedroom, was a shape. Not quite a silhouette, not quite a shadow. Something in between, like the darkness had gathered and formed itself into the suggestion of a human figure. Come here, Sarah, the voice said again, and this time Sarah could see that it was coming from the shape in the doorway. Come here now. Sarah screamed. She scrambled backward on the couch, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. The shape didn't move. It just stood there, darker than the darkness around it, and kept speaking in her mother's voice. Why won't you come here? Don't you love me? Don't you want to see what I have to show you? Sarah grabbed her phone and ran for the front door. She didn't care that she was in her pajamas, didn't care that it was the middle of the night. She wrenched open the door and fled into the hallway, running down the stairs and out into the street. She ran all the way to a 24-hour diner 3 blocks away and called her mother from there, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. Janet picked her up 30 minutes later and drove her back to the apartment in the morning light. Together, they collected Sarah's essentials, clothes, laptop, documents, while Sarah explained everything that had been happening. Janet didn't dismiss her concerns or suggest she was imagining things. She just listened, her face growing paler with each detail. You're not going back there, Janet said firmly. You're staying with me until we figure this out. Sarah never did go back except to move out completely. She broke her lease, took the financial hit, and didn't look back. But the story doesn't quite end there. 2 months after Sarah moved out, she received a Facebook message from a young woman named Emily Ross. Emily had just moved into Sarah's old apartment. The landlord had never mentioned anything unusual about the place, and she wanted to know if Sarah had ever experienced anything strange while living there. Specifically, Emily wanted to know if Sarah had ever heard voices. Sarah's blood ran cold as she read the message. Emily described the exact same phenomenon: a voice calling her name in the middle of the night, a voice that sounded exactly like her own mother, trying to coax her out of bed, trying to get her to come to certain parts of the apartment. Emily had done some research after experiencing the voices for a few weeks. She dug into the history of the building and discovered something that neither she nor Sarah had known. In 1987, a woman named Margaret Winters had lived in that same apartment. Margaret had suffered from severe mental illness and had become convinced that something evil was living in her home, something that mimicked the voices of people she loved to torment her. Her family had tried to get her help, but Margaret had refused, insisting that no one believed her, that they thought she was crazy. One night in October, Margaret was found dead in the apartment. She'd apparently died of a heart attack, alone in her bedroom, but the police report noted that the apartment had been found in a state of chaos. Furniture overturned, belongings scattered, as though Margaret had been running from something. Neighbors reported that in the days before her death, they'd heard Margaret screaming at someone to leave her alone, begging someone to stop calling her name. But when they checked on her, she was always alone. Sarah shared her own experiences with Emily, and they both came to the same conclusion. Whatever had tormented Margaret Winters was still there, still calling out in the darkness, still using the voices of the people its victims loved most. Emily moved out 2 weeks later. The apartment has had 7 tenants in the last 3 years. None of them stay longer than a few months. The building's landlord still claims there's nothing wrong with the unit, that people these days are just too superstitious, too quick to believe in things that aren't real. But Sarah knows better. She knows what she heard. She knows what she saw in that doorway. And sometimes, even now, living in a new apartment across town, Sarah will wake in the dead of night and hear her mother's voice calling from the other room. She never answers anymore. She just puts in her headphones, turns on her white noise, and waits for morning. Because she knows that voice isn't her mother. It never was. Story 2. The Ranger's Warning. Marcus Webb had been a park ranger at Tongass National Forest in Alaska for 8 years when he encountered something that made him question everything he thought he knew about the wilderness he'd devoted his life to protecting. Marcus was 34 years old, experienced, level-headed, and thoroughly comfortable spending long stretches of time alone in the forest. He'd dealt with aggressive wildlife, rescued lost hikers, weathered storms that would send most people running for cover. He thought he'd seen everything the Alaskan wilderness could throw at him. He was wrong. It was late September, that transitional period when summer tourists had mostly left but winter hadn't yet arrived in full force. Marcus was stationed at a remote cabin about 15 miles from the nearest road, monitoring trail conditions and wildlife activity. The cabin was basic: a single room with a wood stove, a narrow bed, a table and chairs, and a radio for emergencies. No electricity except for solar-powered lights, no cell service, no internet. Just Marcus, the forest, and the enormous silence that came with being truly isolated. He'd been there for 5 days when it started. The first night, Marcus was awakened around 2 in the morning by a voice calling his name from outside the cabin. Marcus. Marcus Webb. It was a man's voice, urgent and commanding. Marcus recognized it immediately. It was Tom Hendricks, his supervisor, the head ranger at the district office. Marcus's first thought was that something must be seriously wrong. An emergency, maybe a forest fire or a dangerous situation with hikers. Tom would never come all the way out here in the middle of the night unless it was critical. He threw on his jacket and boots and grabbed his flashlight. When he opened the cabin door, the cold night air hit him like a slap. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the clearing around the cabin. The woodpile, the equipment shed, the tree line about 30 yards away. There was no one there. Tom? Marcus called out, his breath fogging in the cold air. Tom, you out here? No response. Just the whisper of wind through the spruce trees and the distant sound of the creek running down the mountain. Marcus stood there for a full minute, sweeping his flashlight across the darkness, looking for any sign of movement. Nothing. No footprints in the soft earth, no sound of someone moving through the underbrush, no reflection of eyes in the darkness. He went back inside, puzzled. He tried the radio, but it was too late, or too early, to get through to anyone. He'd have to wait until morning. When he did finally reach Tom the next day, his supervisor was confused by the question. "Come out to your cabin?" "Marcus, I haven't left the office in 3 days. I've been buried in paperwork for the end-of-season reports. Why would you think I was there?" Marcus explained what he'd heard, trying to downplay his unease. Tom suggested it might have been a hiker calling out for help, someone whose voice had carried strangely through the forest and sounded like him by coincidence. It was a reasonable explanation, and Marcus wanted to believe it. But something about the experience nagged at him. The voice had been too clear, too perfect. It had sounded exactly like Tom, not just similar. And why would anyone be out hiking at 2 in the morning? The next night it happened again. This time, Marcus was still awake, sitting at the small table and writing in his daily log by lamplight. It was just past midnight when he heard the voice. "Marcus, Marcus, open the door. Hurry." Again it was Tom's voice, but now it sounded panicked, desperate. Marcus's training kicked in. He grabbed his first aid kit and flashlight and rushed to the door. But just as his hand touched the doorknob, something made him pause. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was the memory of the previous night, but something told him to stop and think. If Tom was really out there, really in trouble, there would be other signs. Marcus would have heard a vehicle approach, would have seen headlights through the cabin windows. He would have heard footsteps, heavy breathing, something that indicated another human presence. But there had been nothing. Just the voice appearing out of the silence. "Tom?" Marcus called through the door. "Is that really you?" "Of course it's me." "Open the damn door, Marcus. There's a bear, I need to get inside." A bear. That was plausible. Bear encounters were common in this part of Alaska. But something still felt off. "Tom, what was the name of the first person we rescued together?" Marcus called out. "You remember my first month on the job?" Was a test. Tom would know the answer. Jennifer Marks, a college student who'd gotten turned around on a day hike and spent a cold night in the forest before they found her. There was a long pause. Then the voice spoke again, but this time there was something different about it, something that made Marcus's skin crawl. "Marcus, open the door." The urgency was gone. The panic was gone. Now the voice was flat, emotionless, like a recording playing back words without understanding their meaning. "Let me in, Marcus, let me in." Marcus stepped away from the door, his heart pounding. Whatever was out there, it wasn't Tom. It wasn't human. "Go away," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I know you're not Tom. Leave me alone." The voice changed again. This time it was his ex-wife, Sarah. "Marcus, honey, please open the door. I'm scared. I need you." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. He and Sarah had divorced 3 years ago. She was living in Seattle, over 1,000 miles away. There was absolutely no reason she would be here, no way she could be here. "Marcus, there's something out there. Something following me. Please, baby, let me in." The voice was perfect. It captured every nuance of Sarah's speech, her inflection, even the slight tremor she got in her voice when she was genuinely frightened. If Marcus hadn't known with absolute certainty that Sarah was in Seattle, he would have believed it completely. "You're not Sarah," Marcus said, his voice shaking now. "I don't know what you are, but you're not Sarah." Then the voices started multiplying. His mother, "Marcus, sweetie, it's Mom. I'm lost. I can't find my way back to the car." His best friend from high school, "Dude, Marcus, this isn't funny anymore. Let me in." His younger sister, "Marcus, I'm cold. Please. I'm so cold." A parade of familiar voices, all calling to him from the darkness, all begging to be let in, all of them perfect imitations of people he knew and loved. The voices overlapped, creating a cacophony of pleas and demands that echoed through the night. Marcus backed away from the door, his hands shaking. He grabbed the radio and tried to call for help, but all he got was static. The solar lights in the cabin flickered, dimmed, then went out completely, leaving him in darkness except for the orange glow of the fire in the wood stove. The voices continued for hours. Sometimes they were angry. "Marcus Webb, you open this door right now." Sometimes they were pitiful. "Please, I'm dying out here. Please help me." Sometimes they were seductive. "Come outside, Marcus. Come see what we have to show you. It's beautiful. You'll want to see this." Marcus sat in the corner of the cabin, as far from the door and windows as he could get, his hunting rifle across his lap. He didn't sleep. He just waited, listening to the voices of everyone he'd ever cared about calling to him from the darkness. As dawn broke, the voices finally stopped. In the pale morning light, Marcus worked up the courage to open the door and look outside. The clearing looked exactly as it had the day before. No footprints, no disturbances, no sign that anyone or anything had been there. But when Marcus looked more closely at the ground directly in front of his door, he saw something that made his stomach turn. There were marks in the earth, not footprints exactly, but impressions, like something heavy had been standing there, pressing into the soil. The marks were roughly circular, about 6 inches in diameter, and they were arranged in a pattern that didn't match any animal Marcus knew. Not a bear, not a moose, not anything natural. And around these marks, the vegetation had withered. The grass was brown and dead, the moss dried and crumbling, as though whatever had made those marks had somehow drained the life from the plants beneath it. Marcus packed up his gear and hiked out that same day, breaking protocol and leaving his post early. When he reached the ranger station, he reported everything to Tom, expecting to be dismissed, ridiculed, or sent for a psychological evaluation. Instead, Tom's face went pale. "It happened to you too," Tom said quietly. That's when Marcus learned the truth about the remote cabin. He wasn't the first ranger to report voices in the night at that location. Over the past 30 years, 7 different rangers had reported similar experiences. Voices of loved ones calling from outside the cabin, always between midnight and dawn, always trying to lure the occupant outside. 2 rangers had opened the door. One of them, David Morris, had been found 3 days later, 8 miles from the cabin, curled up at the base of a spruce tree. He was alive but catatonic, unresponsive to questions, staring at nothing. When he finally started speaking again weeks later, all he would say was, "They wore the voices like masks. They wore the voices, but there was nothing underneath." David never worked as a ranger again. He lived in a psychiatric facility now, still unable to fully explain what had happened to him during those missing 3 days. "You're wasting everyone's time." His mother, "I'm so disappointed in you. I thought you would make us proud." The voices spoke over each other, a chorus of criticism and guilt, each one perfectly mimicking someone from Raj's life. The effect was overwhelming, disorienting. Raj sat up in bed, his hands over his ears, but the voices penetrated everything. "Stop," Raj shouted. "Stop it. What do you want?" The voices cut off instantly, replaced by a single voice, male, deep, the same one from the night before. "I want you to come over, Raj. I want you to knock on my door. That's all I want. Just knock on the door and we can stop this." "Who are you?" Raj demanded. "What are you? Come over and find out. Come over and I'll show you everything. Come over and all of this stops. Don't you want it to stop, Raj? Don't you want peace?" Raj grabbed his phone and called the police. The 2 officers who showed up 20 minutes later were professional but clearly skeptical. They knocked on the door to apartment 2B. No one answered. They tried the knob, locked. They asked Raj what exactly he'd heard, and he explained, knowing how crazy it sounded even as the words left his mouth. The older officer, a woman named Torres, gave him a sympathetic look. "Is it possible you were dreaming, sir? Or maybe the sounds were coming from outside, from the street, and echoing up through the building?" "I know what I heard," Raj insisted. "The voice knew my name. It knew about people in my life. This isn't normal neighbor noise." Officer Torres made a note. "We'll ask the building manager about the tenant in 2B. If they're harassing you, we can have a talk with them. But without them answering the door, there's not much we can do right now." After the police left, Raj did something that in retrospect might have been foolish. He went into the hallway and stood in front of the door to apartment 2B. It looked completely ordinary, The same generic brown door as every other apartment in the building, the same brass numbers, 2B, the same peephole. He leaned close, trying to hear any sound from inside. Nothing. He raised his hand to knock, his knuckles an inch from the door. "Don't do it," something inside him screamed. "Whatever is in there, whatever spoke to you, it's been trying to get you to do exactly this. Knock on the door. Come over. Don't give it what it wants." Raj lowered his hand and stepped back. As he did, he could swear he heard something from the other side of the door, a sound like breathing, deep and slow, like something large waiting in the darkness. He went back to his apartment and locked the door behind him. The next day, Raj went to the building manager's office. The manager, a tired-looking man named Kevin, pulled up the records on his computer. "Apartment 2B, Kevin said, scrolling through the information. "Yeah, we have a tenant there. Moved in 3 weeks ago. Paid 6 months rent up front in cash." "What's their name?" Raj asked. Kevin's brow furrowed. "That's weird. The name on the lease it's just a bunch of symbols. Like the computer is glitching out." He turned the monitor so Raj could see. Where the tenant's name should be, there was just a string of random characters, numbers and symbols that made no sense. "This has to be a database error," Kevin muttered. "I'll have to pull the physical paperwork." But when Kevin went to the filing cabinet where lease agreements were kept, he found something that made him go pale. The folder for apartment 2B was there, but the lease agreement inside was blank. Not empty, the paper was there, but it was completely blank, as if it had never been filled out at all. I don't understand," Kevin said. "I remember meeting with someone. I remember showing the apartment. I remember them signing the lease and handing me cash. But I can't picture their face. I can't remember if it was a man or a woman, young or old, nothing." Raj felt a chill run through him. "Can you open the apartment? I think there's something seriously wrong here." Kevin agreed, and together they went upstairs. Kevin knocked first, calling out, "Building management. We need to enter for a maintenance check." No response. Kevin used his master key to unlock the door. It swung open slowly, revealing the apartment beyond. It was completely empty. Not just unfurnished, empty in a way that felt wrong. No furniture, no boxes, no belongings of any kind. The walls were bare, the floors were bare, even the air felt empty, devoid of the traces that humans inevitably leave behind. The smell of food, the scuff marks from shoes, the slight warmth from body heat. But more disturbing than the emptiness was the feeling. The moment Raj stepped across the threshold, he felt it, a presence, heavy and watching, like standing in a room with a predator you couldn't see. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The air felt thick, resistant, like walking through invisible cobwebs. "Hello?" Kevin called out, his voice echoing strangely in the empty space. "Anyone home?" The echo didn't sound right. It didn't fade naturally, but seemed to linger, repeating and distorting, as if the walls themselves were talking back. Raj moved through the apartment slowly, checking each room. The bedroom, empty. The bathroom, empty, though the mirror was covered in a thin film of something that looked like condensation, even though the room was cold. The kitchen, empty, but when Raj opened the refrigerator, he recoiled. Inside, frost covered every surface, but it wasn't normal frost. It had formed in patterns that looked almost like writing, like words in a language Raj didn't recognize. And in the center of the freezer compartment, the frost had formed into what looked disturbingly like a hand, fingers outstretched, as if reaching toward whoever opened the door. "Kevin," Raj said quietly, "you need to see this." But when the building manager joined him and looked into the refrigerator, his face went slack with confusion. "See what? It's just a normal empty fridge." Raj looked again. Kevin was right, the frost was gone. The strange patterns, the hand shape, all of it had vanished as if it had never been there. I saw something," Raj stammered. "There was frost shaped like." "Hey, I believe you," Kevin said, but his tone suggested otherwise. "This whole situation is weird. Look, I'm going to call the number the tenant left, okay? Get some answers." They left the apartment and Kevin locked the door behind them. As they walked back down the hallway, Raj glanced back at apartment 2B. For just a moment, he could swear he saw the peephole darken, as if someone inside was looking out at them. That evening, Kevin called Raj to tell him that the phone number on file for the tenant in 2B was disconnected. Had been disconnected for over 5 years, according to the phone company. It had never been reassigned to a new customer. The previous owner of that number had been an elderly woman who died in 2018. I'm going to start eviction proceedings, Kevin said. Obviously, something fraudulent is going on here. But that takes time, probably a couple of months. In the meantime, if you want to break your lease and move, I completely understand. Raj considered it. But he just moved in 2 months ago. He didn't have the money for another security deposit and first month's rent somewhere else. And besides, what would he tell a new landlord? That he was fleeing because of weird voices from the empty apartment next door? He decided to stay, at least for now. That was a mistake. The voices came back that night with a vengeance. It started at 1 in the morning. Raj was in bed, still awake, reading a textbook on machine learning algorithms when he heard it, not from apartment 2B this time, but from inside his own apartment. Raj. The voice was soft, whispered, coming from his living room. Raj's blood turned to ice. Whatever had been speaking to him from next door was now inside his apartment. Raj, why won't you visit me? I've been waiting so patiently. I've been so patient with you. Raj grabbed his phone, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold it. He pulled up his phone's flashlight and slowly got out of bed, pointing the light toward his bedroom door, which he'd left open. In the harsh LED glare, he could see into his living room. There was nothing there. Nothing visible anyway. But the voice continued, and now it was moving, circling around the room as if the source was walking around his furniture. I'm right here, Raj. Can't you see me? I can see you. I've always been able to see you. Watching through the walls. Watching when you sleep. Watching when you eat. Watching when you cry at night because you miss your family. Raj did cry sometimes, late at night when the stress of his PhD program became too much. But no one knew that. He lived alone. There was no one to see. How? Raj whispered. How are you doing this? The voice laughed, and it was the most inhuman sound Raj had ever heard. A laugh that had no joy in it, no humor, just malice and hunger. The walls are so thin here, Raj. So thin between your world and mine. This building sits on a thin place, a place where I can reach through. And you made it even easier when you acknowledged me. When you answered me that first night. You gave me permission. I didn't give you permission to do anything, Raj said, trying to sound braver than he felt. But you did. You responded. You called out to me. You invited the conversation. And now I'm here. Now I'm so close. All you have to do is let me in completely. All you have to do is open the door. I'm not opening any door for you. Not that door, the voice said, and now it sounded amused. The door in your mind, Raj. The door that keeps you separate from me. Just stop resisting. Just stop fighting. Just listen to my voice and let it in all the way. Let me in and I'll give you everything you want. Peace, success, love, an end to all your struggles. The voice was hypnotic, seductive. Raj felt his mind starting to drift, starting to relax into the rhythm of the words. It would be so easy to just listen, to just stop fighting, to just... No. Raj snapped back to full awareness, his heart pounding. He'd almost done it. He'd almost given in to whatever that thing was. He ran to his door, wrenched it open, and fled into the hallway. He pounded on Mrs. Kowalski's door until she answered, looking frightened by his panic. Please, Raj gasped. Please, I need to stay here for the night. Something is in my apartment. Mrs. Kowalski let him in without hesitation. She made him tea, gave him a blanket, and let him sleep on her couch. She didn't ask too many questions, and Raj was grateful for that. The next morning, Raj returned to his apartment with Mrs. Kowalski and Kevin. In the daylight, the apartment looked completely normal. There was no sign of any disturbance, no indication that anything unusual had happened. But Raj knew better. He could feel it, a wrongness that permeated the space like a stain he couldn't see but could sense. Kevin brought in a locksmith and had a deadbolt installed on the door to apartment 2B, even though there was supposedly no one living there. Just in case, he said, though he couldn't articulate what he was trying to prevent. For 3 days there was silence. No voices from apartment 2B, no presence in Raj's apartment. He started to hope that whatever it was had given up, had moved on to easier prey. Then came the fourth night. Raj woke at 3 in the morning to find his bedroom flooded with voices. Not just one or two, but dozens, hundreds, all speaking at once, all coming from the walls around him. It was as if every person who'd ever lived in the building, ever died in the building, was speaking simultaneously, their voices layered and overlapping into a cacophony of sound that made it impossible to think. And beneath all those voices, threading through them like a dark river, was the original voice, the one that had started it all. Raj. 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 Rajraj Rajraj. His name repeated over and over, faster and faster, until it lost all meaning, becoming just a sound, a rhythm, a pulse that seemed to match his heartbeat. Raj stumbled out of bed, his hands clamped over his ears, but it did nothing to block out the sound. The voices weren't just external, they were inside his head now, inside his thoughts, inside his very consciousness. He ran for the door, but when he reached it, he found it wouldn't open. The deadbolt was still unlocked, the chain wasn't engaged, but the door simply wouldn't budge, as if something on the other side was holding it closed. The voices grew louder, more insistent. Open the door, Raj. Open the door to 2B. Open it now. Open it, open it, open it. Raj realized with horror what was happening. The thing wasn't trying to get into his apartment anymore. It was trying to force him out, trying to push him into opening the door to apartment 2B, trying to get him to cross that threshold. No, Raj said, then shouted it. No, I won't do it. I'll never do it. The voices changed, becoming angry, furious. You will open the door. You will come to me. You have no choice. You belong to me now. I own your name. I own your voice. Soon I will own all of you. Raj fell to his knees, the pressure inside his head becoming unbearable. He could feel something trying to take control, trying to move his limbs, trying to make him stand up and walk to the door to apartment 2B. In desperation, he did the only thing he could think of. He started reciting prayers his grandmother had taught him when he was a child, mantras in Sanskrit that he barely remembered, anything that connected him to something older and stronger than whatever was attacking him. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. The voices screamed, a sound so loud and so terrible that Raj thought his eardrums would burst. The lights in his apartment flickered and died. The temperature plummeted. His breath came out in clouds of frost. But he kept praying, kept reciting, kept holding on to the words like a lifeline. And slowly, gradually, the voices began to fade. They didn't leave willingly. They clawed and fought for every inch, but they retreated. The pressure in Raj's head eased. The control over his limbs returned. The door to his apartment suddenly swung open, no longer held shut by invisible force. Raj crawled into the hallway and didn't stop crawling until he reached the stairs. He went down to the first floor, out the front door, and sat on the curb outside the building until the sun came up. He never went back inside. That same day, Raj broke his lease, forfeited his security deposit, and moved into temporary housing. He didn't care about the money. He didn't care about the inconvenience. He just needed to be away from that building, away from that apartment, away from whatever was in apartment 2B. Before he left, he warned Mrs. Kowalski. He told her everything, expecting her to think he was crazy. Instead, she just nodded sadly. You're the third tenant from your apartment to leave suddenly in 2 years, she said. The others, they wouldn't talk about why. But I see their faces when they go. I see the fear. Same fear you have now. Why do you stay? Raj asked. Mrs. Kowalski smiled, but it was a sad smile. I am old, Raj. I have lived in this building for 30 years. Whatever is here, it has never bothered me. Maybe because I don't hear so well anymore. Maybe because I am too close to the other side myself for it to bother with me. Or maybe it just doesn't want me. It wants the young ones, the strong ones. As Raj drove away from the building for the last time, he looked up at the second floor. He could see his old apartment window and, next to it, the window of apartment 2B. In that window, just for a moment, he saw a figure. Not a clear shape, just a darkness that was somehow darker than the rest. A shadow that didn't belong. And as he watched, the shadow seemed to wave. 3 months later, Raj received an email from Kevin, the building manager. A new tenant had moved into Raj's old apartment. A young woman named Jennifer, fresh out of college, excited about her first place living alone. Kevin attached a copy of a police report. 5 days after moving in, Jennifer had knocked on the door of apartment 2B at 3 in the morning. The police found her standing in the hallway, her hand raised to knock again, completely unresponsive. Her eyes were open but unfocused, and she was whispering something over and over. When they finally got her to the hospital and she regained some awareness, all she would say was, "The voice told me to knock. I had to knock. It knew my name. It knew everything about me. I just had to knock." Jennifer was undergoing psychiatric evaluation. The doctors believed she'd had some kind of psychotic break. But Raj knew better. He never replied to Kevin's email. He never contacted Jennifer. There was nothing he could say that would help, nothing he could do to undo what had been done. He just hoped that wherever Jennifer was, someone was helping her resist. Helping her fight against the voice that now lived inside her head, calling her name in the darkness, trying to get her to open the door. Raj still hears it sometimes, even now, even living in a different apartment miles away. Late at night, right on the edge of sleep, he'll hear a voice calling his name. Sometimes it's his father. Sometimes it's his mother. Sometimes it's people he hasn't thought about in years. But he never answers. He never responds. He never acknowledges the voice in any way. Because he knows that if he does, if he gives it even the smallest opening, it will find him again. It will come back. And next time, it might not be satisfied with just calling his name. Next time, it might find a way to make him open the door. Closing. 3 stories. 3 voices in the night. 3 terrifying reminders that not everything that speaks to us in the darkness has our best interests at heart. Sarah learned that her mother's voice could be weaponized against her, used as bait to lure her toward something that wanted to consume her. Marcus discovered that the wilderness holds entities that collect our voices like trophies, wearing them like masks to draw us out of safety. And Raj found that some places are thin enough that things from the other side can reach through, learning our names, learning our voices, learning everything about us until they can perfectly mimic the people we love. The common thread in all 3 stories? The victims all heard something familiar, something that should have been comforting, turned into something predatory. They heard the voices of people they trusted, people they loved, calling to them from the darkness. And that's what makes these stories so terrifying. We're hardwired to respond to familiar voices, especially the voices of people we care about. When we hear someone we love calling for help, our instinct is to answer, to go to them, to do whatever they ask. But what if that voice isn't really them? What if something else has learned to speak with their voice, to use your love and trust against you? These 3 people survived their encounters, but they're forever changed. They second-guess every voice they hear in the night. They lie awake, wondering if that sound was really just the building settling or something else. They can never fully trust their own senses again. So here's my advice, and I want you to take it seriously. If you hear a voice calling to you in the night, a voice that sounds familiar but shouldn't be there, your mother when you know she's across town, your friend when you know they're out of state, your partner when you know they're asleep next to you, don't answer. Don't investigate. Don't open the door. Don't give it acknowledgement. Because the moment you respond, the moment you engage, you've opened a door that's very difficult to close. Stay safe out there. Keep your doors locked. Keep your phone charged. And remember, just because something knows your name doesn't mean you owe it a response. If you enjoyed these stories and want more true horror content, make sure you're subscribed to Dark Whispers. Hit that like button if this video gave you chills, and drop a comment below telling me about your own experiences with unexplained voices. Have you ever heard something calling to you that shouldn't have been there? I read every comment, and your stories might just end up featured in a future episode. Check out the videos on screen for more terrifying true stories, and remember, the next time you hear your name called in the darkness, make absolutely sure you know who's doing the calling before you answer. Until next time, stay in the light. This has been Dark Whispers.